All right, welcome to our webinar series on developing principled Christian leaders, and it's sponsored by the Congregational Vitality Team of the East Ohio United Methodist Church. And tonight's topic is leadership multiplication. So there's a handout for this session, and it's helpful for you to have that handout with you as we go through the course. My name is Ken Willard, and I'm with the organization Leadership for Transformation, and I'll be your host today as we go through the course. So churches of all sizes and types are often challenged to find leaders that they need for the ministry God is calling them to, both today and for the future. And the focus of our session today is for us to challenge the paradigm of how we fill leadership positions in our churches. So let's open this up with a question. How do you think most churches today fill their leadership positions? What's the process?
Well, in my small membership church, it's the same 12 people who have volunteered for the last 6 to 8 years.
Okay. All right. So we kind of move people from one leadership position to another. Okay, good. What else?
Ken, I would offer, I'm looking at the handout for this. I would say what I've seen most is the replacement. You know, rather than training someone, I mean, you find someone who does have naturally skills and gifts that maybe they've learned outside the church. It's like, hey, it's great. You know, you move them in gradually,
Right.
But it's a little different from what this handout is talking about.
Right. Good. Thank you. Yeah, I think unfortunately in many of our churches we wait until there's an opening. Or we wait until there's an imminent need to fill an opening. So sometimes I hear churches talk about, the committee will get together, they're looking at who's rotating off, and they'll take the church directory and try to match up. So, who do we have that might, fill a position? And like Jim said, that's really reactive rather than proactive. And tonight we really want to focus on the other way to do that, the more proactive way. So as you can see on the slide, the current leaders in our churches are really the best resource to identify and to grow our future leaders. Now, sometimes this process will challenge the way that we're currently doing leadership in our churches. So there's a challenge of we've never done this, this way before. We've always done it the other way. We've always filled openings as they happen or as they're about to happen. Sometimes there's a fear that the power is shifting. So in some churches there's a committee or a team that fills all the positions, and that committee kind of holds some power about who's going to be in each position. Even if we're just shuffling the cards, there's still some power about who goes where and who has that say. So that's something to be aware of. And it also means that the current leaders must be equipped and empowered to identify and equip their replacements. So this is a little different type thinking than how we've operated really in most of our churches. So Jim mentioned the handout, and on the handout, we talk about succession planning. So has anybody heard the term succession planning before? You ever encountered that term before?
I think I've experienced it in another lifetime career. Where we knew that there was going to be a transition in a leadership position. The current leader spent a great deal of time mentoring the next leader coming on board. before that leader stepped in to fill the position. So I'm reading this. It seems to be familiar to what I've done in another career.
Good, good. Well, can I ask a favor? Would you read that for us, that definition that's on the handout?
Sure. Thanks. See if I answer another question. Identification and development of potential successors for key positions in an organization through a systematic evaluation process and training. Unlike replacement planning, which grades an individual solely on the basis of his or her past performance, succession planning is largely predictive in judging an individual for a position he or she might never have been in.
Very good. Thank you for reading that. So, it's important for us to think about, there are always going to be times where an opening happens unexpectedly and we have to fill it. And there's just, that's kind of life. Somebody moves or whatever. However, it's important for us to begin to make the shift in moving from reactive to being more proactive. And that's what I like about this definition. That's what I like about, true succession planning means that we're looking forward, we're looking into the future, and we're preparing people so that they're ready if those openings occur, if it all happens. So, it's important for us to think about more proactive than reactive. Okay, so next piece is also on your handout. Succession planning strategies. And these apply really to any organization. And I think they apply as much or more so in the church world than anywhere else. So succession planning really involves 4 strategies of development. The first is identifying potential leaders. And we covered that actually during our servant leadership webinar. So if you haven't had a chance to view that webinar, to look at that information, I'd encourage you to do so. That's one of the areas we focused on, was identifying potential leaders. The second area is equipping them to develop their leadership skills. We're going to cover that in more detail in 2 of our upcoming webinar sessions. One is growing new leaders, and the other one is creating a leadership culture. So those 2 webinars will go deeper into that topic. The third area is mentoring them to be effective, and I'm going to share some about that here in a minute. And then the fourth area is empowering them to use their gifts in ministry. So it's important that we're empowering people. So how might we empower someone to use their gifts in ministry? What might that look like in a church setting?
I think maybe once you recognize someone with certain either spiritual gifts or talents that can be used in ministries in the church, you need to set up situations in which they can use those or possibly start new ministries with those.
Okay, good, yeah, excellent. Anyone else? What would it look like to empower a leader in the church?
I think you invite them into the decision-making process on ministries, and that might mean asking questions of them, getting their opinions on things. What's the you got a situation that you're just trying to work through. Like, what is your opinion on this? What do you think is the best way to go about this?
Right. Excellent. Yeah, most of us have probably experienced in some form or fashion what might be called micromanaging. If you think about someone who, not us, obviously, but other people, would micromanage someone, and they would tell them exactly what to do. Do this at this time, go here, here's how you fill it out. Here's every step along the way. Well, if you think about micromanagement, and then you think about the opposite of that, and the opposite of that might be, a good way to view empowerment. Here's the goal. I want you to achieve that goal. How you get there is up to you. I can help. I can provide resources. I can remove obstacles. I'm here if you need me, but I'm not going to tell you exactly, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I think that's a good way to envision empowerment. I want to be really clear on the goal. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to achieve, but how you get there, that's up to you. So good. So I'm going to share with us tonight what I think is a very powerful mentoring model, and I've been sharing this with churches for several years now, and I think it seems pretty helpful to people when they talk about mentoring, what it might look like. So I'm going to walk through this model, and I'm going to use the example of an ad board chairperson who has identified their replacement. So this is someone, imagine in your church, the chairperson for your ad board who has identified somebody on the board now that they feel would be great to take their place, to step in to the role when they rotate off. So for the example, I'm going to say that our current chairperson is David, and he's been in position for a year or so, whatever, and he's identified Susan, who he feels would make a good replacement when he rolls off the position. So David talks to Susan. He explains to her that he sees the gift of leadership in her and encourages her to begin praying about replacing him in a couple of years and what that might look like. She agrees that it's something she'll pray for and it's something she's interested in. So they begin the process. One of the areas that David wants to mentor Susan is in creating the agenda for the ad board meeting and also in running the ad board meeting. So those are kind of the areas, not the only 2 areas, but those are 2 of the areas that he's, mentoring her to be his replacement. So they get together before the next ad board meeting, and she watches him create the agenda. She asks questions. She also watches him run the meeting. And then after the meeting, they get together and they just have a short, informal conversation. So what might they talk about? What do you think they might talk about after that first session?
If I were the person being mentored, I would want to know why what does he hope to accomplish in the meetings, which would probably dictate the agenda, but is there a common goal that you want to reach with these meetings? And how do you determine what that is?
Exactly. That's a great part of the conversation. It's wonderful. What else? What else might they talk about in that short, informal conversation?
Some questions that come to mind are, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel?
Right.
Did anything surprise you? Just some of those processing questions.
Right. I mean, I think just a natural conversation, but beginning the process of helping, in this example, Susan kind of understand. So, what did you see? Because it's different if you're being mentored to fill a new position than if you're just attending the meeting. So hopefully now she's beginning to see things in a little different light. So what did you notice? What might you have done differently? Things like that. So I think it's really more questions than it is, a lecture or teaching or anything like that. And that's really the essence of this first stage. I do, you watch, we talk. So that's really the first step. I believe in a strong mentoring model is someone, the mentor doing it, but the person being mentored is watching and observing, and then afterwards we talk about it. So before the next meeting, David and Susan get together. They create the agenda together. David is careful not to get ahead of Susan, careful not to, just do it out of habit, but to let her make inputs, make suggestions. They also agree that she's going to facilitate a section of the meeting that night. And then after the meeting, again, they hang around for a few minutes and they talk. So what do you think they talk about at this stage?
Maybe what went as expected and what didn't. If that individual, she was helping with the agenda, what surprised you?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it can happen.
Right. Good. So let me ask you guys. So who do you feel is ultimately responsible for the agenda and for running the meeting at this stage?
It'd still be David.
Still be David.
Yeah.
Yes. He is still the chairperson. He's still, ultimately responsible. He's giving Susan, in this example, some freedom. He's encouraging her, but he's not relinquishing. He's still the chairperson. So, at this stage, I do, you help, we talk. All right. So the next time, David and Susan again get together before the meeting. This time, Susan creates the whole agenda by herself. David makes a couple of suggestions, but he understands that she needs to do it her way, not his way. During the meeting, Susan facilitates more than half of the session. David covers a couple of small areas, but once again, they hang around after the meeting, they talk. So again, at this stage, it's more questions. Susan is assuming more responsibility. She's creating it. She's running the meeting. He's there, but the roles, as you notice, from the second step to the third step, the roles reverse. And so now David is more of the safety net than actually running the whole thing and doing it all himself, with her just helping. So this is an important stage in the process when the two roles, as far as mentoring goes, start to switch. And then the next step, this is important for us to remember that, they might stay at any of the previous stages for several months. So this is not necessarily a 1 month, you change and then the next month you go to the next. You've got to make sure that the person being mentored is ready to move to the next stage. So they could be at the first stage for, 2 or 3 months before they move to the second. It all depends on the exact situation and the exact people. Everybody's different. But eventually, in this example, David and Susan get to the point where she's ready to create the agenda, run the meeting on her own. David is still the chairperson, and he's ultimately responsible, but he's allowing Susan a lot of freedom based on the journey to this point. So she changes the agenda a little bit. She runs the meeting very differently than David did, but the desired results are still the same. An effective ad board meeting, they're still achieving the goals. It's just being done a little differently. And after the meeting, they get together and they talk. And it's really the same same conversation you guys have already mentioned before. What did you see? What was different now? This is a different stage. What questions do you have? At this point, it's really becoming real, probably, for Susan. It's becoming more like she really is the chairperson, even though she's not in that role yet. And then the fifth stage is one that even some of the best mentoring models tend to forget this stage. But after Susan transitions into the new ad board chairperson, she is still looking for and trying to identify who's going to succeed her. And at some point, hopefully, she identifies a new leader that's going to take her place in 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be. She has the same talk with them that David had with her several years ago. And at that point, she contacts David and gets together for, again, a quick informal conversation and talks about, what's going on, what's different now that you're mentoring someone else. And as you can imagine, it's another paradigm shift to move from being the mentee or the person being mentored to now mentoring someone new. So this is a very powerful conversation and a critical piece of the whole process, really. That brings it kind of full circle around. So I'll pause right there before we go to the next section. But what questions might you have about any of the mentoring model?
I have 2 questions, Ken. I don't know if they directly relate to the mentoring model, but to everything, sure. I guess. One is, can you just make the connection between this kind of leadership development and discipleship? And 2, just thinking about what Teresa said in the small church, and as I serve small churches, I think the role of the pastor in this kind of mentoring work is key, especially in a smaller system, that I can remember having to identify leaders and do some mentoring with somebody who I identified as a next church council person or something of that nature. Right. So you just talk about translation to that smaller system and discipleship.
Sure. So, I would say there's a huge connection with this mentoring model and discipleship. I mean, this is really the key essence of discipleship is relationship. That's what true discipleship, I believe, is all about. And that's what we're talking about here. And it just happens to be the relationship of a mentor and somebody being mentored. But in discipleship, I think that's a key piece of discipleship. Someone who's a little further ahead, helping someone, take those steps, but not from a strict, this is what you must do. I think the best mentoring is when the person who's mentoring knows that the other person and asks those questions. What would be helpful for you? Reaching them right where they are and just helping them take that next step. That's exactly what we're talking about here is helping someone make those progressions. And I think just like discipleship, sometimes it's messy and sometimes it doesn't move necessarily in the order you want it to. So when you look at this mentoring model, in some cases, a person may actually take a step back because we've tried to go too fast. So I think with discipleship, it's the same way. I don't think discipleship is about providing the answers, but helping to empower someone to find those answers themselves, to learn and grow in different areas. So at least for me, there's a direct correlation. I hope that helps answer. For the small church, I think it still applies. It applies though in a different way. And I think that even in a case where you're moving, let's say, one leader from one position to a different position, and 2 leaders are kind of changing positions, let's say, I think mentoring can and should still take place. I think that it's a matter of helping those leaders understand the new role and walk into the new position rather than having a hard stop. And I think that's what happens, unfortunately, in a lot of churches of all sizes, to be honest. A role ends on October 31st, and a new role begins on November 1st, and there's no overlap. And so we're assuming that just because a person was a leader in one area, they can just step right in and be a leader in the other area. And I think in any size church, a church of 12 people, it's still important to help those transitions. And that's what I would emphasize is how do we have smoother transitions, and how do we help people take those gifts and the learnings that they've had and apply it in a new way. So Kelly, is that what you were looking for?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So I'm going to wrap up with just a couple of reasons to promote the multiplication of leaders. I think it's important that we're connecting all of this really always back to Scripture. So the first reason is that it honors Christ's vision for the church, and we read in Ephesians 4:12, their responsibility, and they're referring to church leaders' responsibility, is to equip God's people to do His work and to build up the church, the body of Christ. The second reason is that it multiplies our ministry effectiveness. And again, this is from Ephesians 4:16. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly as each part does its own special work. It helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing full of love. And then finally, it creates a culture which continually attracts growth. And this is one of those verses where I think we've all heard it and read it many times. But in Matthew 4:19, Jesus says, "Come and follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people." And it's important for us to realize He did not say, "Come and follow me, and I will send you to a class. I will buy you a book." I will, those are all good things. I write books, I do classes, I think they're all great things. But at the end of the day, what Jesus did was relationship. And He had different relationships with different groups of people. He had the 70, He had the 12, and He had the 3. And I think it's important, when we think about mentoring, it's about focusing it down to one or two people, and how do we help them to really empower them to be successful in leadership in our churches. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this has added some value, give you some things to think about. In your handout, there are some resources that I would recommend, some great books. And you see a couple of them on the screen there. Some are church books. Some are business books that I think really apply, especially in the church world. If I was going to highlight a couple, I would probably highlight The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. I think it's just a wonderful book. And then I think, Andy Stanley's Next Generation Leader has some great things in there that apply, again, in just about every ministry setting. So I'm going to stop here and just ask, are there questions? If you don't have a question, I would love to hear just a key learning. What's, something you picked up from tonight's session?
I think it's good to be reminded of this. It's easy to just fill holes. And even if you are filling them with effective people, this takes it to another level that too easily we don't do enough of. So I just that point right there was helpful for me.
Good. Thank you.
This is Tina. I think that it allows us to know that, I was glad what you said was that it doesn't happen overnight, that it's a process. I think
Right.
too often we try to think it's going to be an overnight success, but if you work with one, then that next one trains another, and that changes that whole mindset. So I appreciate that part of it.
Good, good. Thank you.
I think for me, the mentoring model we used all the time in education, of course, with student teachers and things like that.
Right.
And I think you forget about taking that and putting it into this next setting or this different setting a lot of times.
Right.
It's a little different when you're dealing between people who are paid and those who are volunteering sometimes.
Yes.
But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
It's about adapting it to a different context. So yeah, good, good, good.
And I want to echo somewhat Brian. My prior life history was in the military, so mentoring was a lot more about, and I was a leader. So mentoring was more about, this is the goal, this is the process, this is how you will do it. So being reminded that although there was a lot of mentoring going on with that, that again, these are volunteers.
Mhm.
In my small church, they are not paid staff. And that while some of those things will work really well, and it's good to be reminded that I had a process, it's also good to remember that to adapt it to people who are not required to be in leadership positions. So
Good.
learning how to use that process in a different setting.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Well, I hope you have found value. I hope you continue on this journey. As Kelly mentioned earlier, we do have additional webinars coming up, and I just encourage you, sign up for those, share with others. We'd love to share this with as many people as possible. And Kelly, any closing words of wisdom? We don't.
Forgot to unmute. So yeah, just sharing this information with others and helping others to be a part of these webinars is the big thing, I think.
Good, good. And as always, if anything that we can do to help you on the journey, please reach out to us. So blessings. Thank you for your time and your investment tonight, and blessings in your ministry.
And
Thank
thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.